again, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons. I'm your host, and I'm glad you're tuning in. Well, happy to say it's August. Summer's right in its, peak. It would be nice if it stopped raining for a bit, because it seems to be putting a damper on things, but it's no excuse not to get out and enjoy beautiful things in and around Manchester. On my last show, I talked to you a bit about the city swimming pools and about how the Parks Department was pushing to renovate Hunt Memorial Pool over on Maple Street, and then add a new splash park there, much like the DuPont splash pad, which is up in the northwest part of Manchester. I voiced my concern then about spending money to both renovate the Hunt Memorial Pool and add a splash pad. And I'm sure I've talked about, needs versus wants, and is this something we really need in the city, or is this just something we want? Now this morning in today's Union Leader, and today is Tuesday, I don't know, the 14th, I guess, Tuesday the 14th. This morning in the Union Leader, I read that the Parks Department is having issue with parks. There's an article about taking back the parks because apparently they're having a huge problem with litter in parks and vandalization and people living in, bushes and shrubbery and whatnot. And the area that the parks director is most concerned about is the skate park, which is adjacent to the Hunt Memorial Pool. From the article this morning, it says, the skate park is currently unable to be used in the manner in which it was intended due to the current element who have claimed the park. According to Parks Director Don Pennard, the park is a haven for illegal activity, violent, and overall disruptive behavior. There is a daily stream of trash and broken beer bottles, some of which are on the pool deck and in the pool. We have an attendant at the pool. Every day he cleans up all the trash and the next morning it's back again. It's an everyday occurrence. And he also said that there had been reports of people flashing guns in daytime. So there's some less than admirable behavior over in the area, not just in this one park, but in the skate park, Hunt Memorial Pool Park area. So that made me think, so wait a minute, this is the pool that just in the past couple weeks I read that the parks wants to invest hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars into. Not only to improve and repair the pool that's already there that we're reading has trash and broken beer bottles in it daily, but they want to add a splash park to it. So they want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a letter from Parks Director Don Pennard to Alderman Berry, who chairs up the Committee on Public Safety, Health, and Traffic, this is what a portion of that letter says. The skate park is currently unable to be used in the manner in which it was intended due to the current element who have claimed the park. These people are using it for illegal activity, violent and overall disruptive behavior. There's a daily stream of trash, broken beer bottles, some of which are on the pool deck and in the pool, and displays of weapons even in broad daylight, which I will just say, there is no law against seeing a gun, but I'm sure that's not what he was getting at. Hunt Pool is broken into on a regular basis with people cutting the fence and swimming at night. During midsummer, this is almost a nightly occurrence. The vandalism not as only brought budget implications, but also creates safety and liability concerns. So I can't imagine spending one penny of tax dollars, let alone hundreds of thousands of tax dollars, in an area that apparently has a huge issue and is out of control. I'm not sure adding a splash pad that would be used during the daytime isn't going to deter the vandalism and whatnot that is happening at night. I know like when they built the bike path in West Manchester, there was concerns that there'd be, seedy elements hanging out on the bike path, but because the bike path is used on a regular basis and you never know when somebody's going to go by, that doesn't seem to be the case. But apparently that is the case. That is what's happening at Hunt Memorial Pool and the skate park adjacent to it. There is constant vandalism. There is constantly somebody breaking into the pool. There's broken glass in the pool, near the pool. And yet this is the area that the Parks Department has decided that they would like us to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make better, so that I guess more people go to the park that has broken glass in the pool and whatnot. So sometimes I wonder if there's a disconnect between well-intentioned city employees. I'm not really meaning to, disparage them. Their intention is good, but I think sometimes we've gotten so big as a city, and the departments have gotten so big that we kind of lost touch with what the city should and shouldn't be doing for the people who are paying for those bills. Should we be spending, should people's money be spent on things that we can't even manage what's there already? I don't know what the solution is over there, if it's more police or whatnot, and then the police will say they don't have enough officers, and it just snowballs into this big problem. I would like to think that if we had more pride in our city, which could come from ways other than just spending money, there would be less of a problem. If there were more people working and less people not working, there'd probably be less of a problem. If there were more owner-occupied homes, there'd probably be less of a problem. There's all sorts of things. So that's my part about the pool and whether we should invest hundreds of thousands of dollars of your money into it or not. And that brought me to the second article I read in the Union Leader this morning. And this one has had a much better vibe. There's a developer who has purchased the properties on Elm Street that used to home Rack's Billiards and what was LeMay Jewelers. So pretty much from the farm restaurant, which sits on the corner of Bridge and Elm, all the way up to the next block. There's a yellow brick building of Art Deco style that on the corner used to have LeMay's Jewelers, and then in between was Rack's Billiards for years. A developer bought them, and which makes me happy because I've walked by there and drove by there with Dan so many times, and I've always wondered, geez, there's a really, really pretty Art Deco building that's just sitting here not being utilized, and it's a shame that, nobody's doing something with it. Well, that enter developer Robin Alexander, who purchased the buildings for $2 million and expects to invest another $3 million into them. And in it, the first floor will be retail. So you'll still see probably that storefront from LeMay and whatnot. It won't be LeMay Jeweler, it'll be something else. But the upper levels would be 32 apartments, studio for 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. In the Union Leader article, one comment stuck out at me. There was articles from Tim Baines, the alderman, talking about this could help alleviate the much needed housing for those who want to live downtown, and different people talking about how this would be good. Robert Gagney, the chairman of the City Board of Assessors, so they're the ones who oversee the assessment of properties in Manchester for tax purposes, said there's been some building makeovers north of Bridge Street along Elm in recent years, but others could use a facelift. I think that there's probably, for at least a couple blocks north of the Elm Bridge intersection, opportunities to get some better uses out of those buildings. Well, now, when I read that, instead of that just being, yay, go team, positive statement, I read that as, they should really improve those properties so we can tax them more. Because that's kind of what happens. Because for this developer, you want to build 32 studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments. Well, the city's going to ding you for about $100,000 in school impact fees, whether there's an impact to the schools or not. Oh, and plan on your property taxes on those properties going up too, because the same thing happens with residential properties. You want to put siding on your house? Why then should you have to pay a larger portion of the school budget? Because that's really what it is. You improve your property, your taxes go up, which means you, for making your house look better, are now responsible for a larger portion of, say, the school budget. Now, in the process of putting that siding on your house, first thing you're going to pay is you're going to pay 1% to the city in the form of permission to do the work in the first place. It's called a building permit, and there's a 1% tax in there. They don't call it a tax, but let's be honest, it's the tax me now so you can tax me more later tax. So you're going to pay 1% to get permission to put the siding on. You're going to pay a contractor to put the siding on, and then guess what's going to happen? Your valuation's going to go up, and you're going to pay more taxes. So, and that means you're going to pay more towards the schools. So I don't get the correlation between improving your property, putting siding on it, and somehow having to pay a higher portion of the school bill. That just doesn't curb appeal, school obligations. They don't seem to, there's no correlation there for me. So this past week, I had a long conversation on Facebook about which way is the fairest way to tax people locally in municipal. We're not talking about state taxes or federal taxes, but here in Manchester, in your various communities, what is the fairest way to tax people? And I like to look at every tax as if it was a user fee. You know, there are certain things, the schools, that might better be taxed by the person, because the more people using the schools. I don't know if I'll ever see something like that in my lifetime, but I actually think that would be fair. I do think that somebody who has 6 children in the public schools should probably be paying more for the public schools than an 80-year-old person living in their house. I just think so. And then it comes to property taxes. I don't believe in taxing income. I don't think you should be penalized for being more successful in your employment decisions. I definitely don't think that your investments should be taxed. You know, we could debate spending all day long and whether we spend too much, which we all know we do, but the property tax is probably, you know, the fairest way to tax people for fire and police and snow plowing and trash pickup and things like that, because each house increases the need. What I don't agree with is the valuation process. So right now we base our property taxes, and this is a statewide thing, this isn't just Manchester, we base it on the resale value of your house, the real estate, the market value. What has that got to do with anything? First of all, the market goes up, the market goes down. If it happens to go up when you buy it and then down afterwards, you could be being taxed at a higher number because you happen to buy your house in the middle of that 5-year cycle when they do reassessments. Same if you bought when it was low, you could be paying far less than, you know, what would be equitable for your neighbors. It's too interpretive in my opinion. There's too much flux. There's too much change. Never mind the fact that it costs the city a lot of money to constantly have to reevaluate the values of these houses. There's a whole department. The Department of Assessors is there to assess property values. How about this? How about instead of basing it on the current market value, which really doesn't work, because, I mean, it does work, don't get me wrong, but is it fair? The house that's better kept up pays more than the house that isn't. It's a disincentive to improve your property. So instead of basing it on the market value, how about we base it on square footage and acreage? Because guess what? Those things don't change. And this all came about because I was reading the article about the house that sits up on Upper Hanover Street that's been boarded up forever. Apparently it had a fire in the 70s and it's, you know, uninhabitable. So finally this past week there was an article that they finally tore it down. And it always intrigued me because I'd look up the property tax values on that, and it's 1/3 of an acre, and there's a 700 square foot carriage house that the owner lives in, and then there was this huge structure that was boarded up with plywood, which apparently he was using as storage, but the property taxes on that seem to be lower than other properties that were on significantly smaller lots. You know, one could say, well, that was a burnt out house. Well, there's a burnt out house on West Street on a lot that's like 15% the size of that lot on Hanover Street, yet they pay more in property taxes. So, I like the idea of even just thinking about the idea that we're doing it in, a more expensive way because we have to pay assessors, more likely to be, unfair from one property to the next. Now I'm going to take our house on Varney Street, for example. We have 1,379 square feet, and it sits on just about 1/3 of an acre of land with a 216 square foot shed that I and everybody else will agree is in much need of some renovation love. Shouldn't our taxes be based on that we have a 1,379 square foot home, we have a 216 square foot shed, and we have like 1/3 of an acre of land? There wouldn't be a need to come back and reassess it every 5 years. The only thing would change is if I went and paid that 1% to get a building permit to do an addition. Say I wanted to expand, you know, my kitchen another 12 feet, and I, you know, added another 250 square feet or whatever the case may be. Then my number would change. But should my taxes go up? Should I pay more for the schools because I put some of my own money into making my shed better? It hasn't changed the size of my shed. I just improved it so it's less of an eyesore to my neighbors. You would probably be able to eliminate the assessor's office. It's not that I'm looking to get rid of people's jobs, just for the sake of getting rid of people's jobs, but it probably is a department that we don't need. And in a time where we're constantly facing budget crises about how we're going to pay for everything, it would be nice if we could eliminate practically a whole department. People wouldn't need to appeal their assessments because there would be nothing to appeal. My 1,379 square feet would be 1,379 square feet next year and the year after. This would remove that disincentive to improve your property. It wouldn't matter whether I put hardwood floors in my house and granite countertops and gold gilded light fixtures, and if I had vinyl siding or cedar siding or a metal roof or an asphalt roof or any of that. None of that would impact my responsibility of what portion I have to pay towards the city and school budgets. People would, in my opinion, would be more likely to improve their properties because they wouldn't be dinged for it the next year in their property taxes. So it's just something to think about. And that brought me to another thought this morning about should the city do something about blighted properties in the city? And I'm not talking about places where people live and maybe, you're upset that your neighbor doesn't mow his lawn enough, or you're upset that your neighbor, stores a motorcycle in the driveway, or whatever the case may be. I don't think we want to interfere in personal property rights about how you keep the property that you live in. But there are properties in the city that I wonder if the city shouldn't be stepping in and doing something. Because of that house on Hanover Street that I said had been boarded up apparently since like the 70s, if I didn't read the article wrong, whatever it was, as long as I can remember, that house on Hanover Street had been boarded up. What is that doing to the value of the house next to it? And that value is what we're basing property taxes on it. So is the house next to it actually paying a lower property tax value because of this boarded up house? And is that really fair to the house one block away that's the same size? So that's not the only property. There's many properties that sit blighted and empty that are concerning. There's a house over on West Street that had a fire about 2 years ago and has been boarded up with plywood ever since. If I had a bet of beer, I'd say that there's probably people sneaking in there to squat there or do drugs in there, or kids getting in trouble in there. There's also a house down on 2nd Street over near where the Burger King is that years ago there was a fire on the 3rd floor. That house, I believe, sits vacant because the 3rd floor has a hole in the roof. There was a big fire and it was never repaired. Now, some property owners have fires and they repair them immediately. There was a fire on West Hancock Street just in the past few, earlier this year, maybe late last year, where it highly damaged the property, and that's probably almost to the point where they're going to be able to rent it back out again. And then there was an article this week about a house located at 416 Central Street, which for as long as I've known people living on Central Street, that house has been vacant. There's trees growing in it, and there was a fire there this past week, and now we find out that the property owner doesn't have property insurance on it, which makes sense because what insurance company is going to insure a vacant property that's got trees growing in it? So now we've got a burnt building that had trees growing in it and is vacant. And the fire officials described it at the 3rd floor bedroom as a shooting gallery. Neighbors had been saying that it had been vacant for years and become a crash pad for vagrants. The floor was littered with syringes, and vagrants collected human waste in water bottles in a 5-gallon bucket. So what should the city do in this case? Should the city require that those property owners either somehow repair those buildings or demolish them? They're eyesores, they're problem areas for vandalism, their potential for fires are higher, which puts other properties in their neighborhood at risk, and it does drive down the resale values, the actual real estate values. I'm not talking about property taxes, but if the guy who lives next door to that house wants to sell their property, they're not going to be able to get much because there's a house next door that's been burnt out and has trees growing in it and people doing drugs on the upper floor. So, what should the obligation be of property owners within the city? Should a neighbor be able to sue them because their property is causing a decrease in the real estate market value of their own home. I don't know. It's just something to think about. So that's my thing. We shouldn't probably invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a pool that has ongoing problems with vandalism and break-ins and is out of control. Get it under control first before you ask to spend more hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. Maybe we should really consider, or people should actually just think about, do we assess properties in the best way possible to generate the property taxes that exist to pay the city services like snowplow and fire and police and the schools? Should we remove disincentives for people to improve their property or not? And what should the city do about these blighted, vacant properties around the city? Enough with that. Coming up to do in the next couple weeks, today is Tuesday the 14th, and this Thursday, August 16th, Manchester's very own Jimmy LaHoo will be playing in one of the In Town Manchester's free concert series. That is this Thursday night, August 16th at Veterans Park. That kicks off at 7 o'clock. Jimmy LaHoo and his band are a great show. So if you want something to do this Thursday night, go down there and check that out. You can also go to the Farmers Market earlier that day, and then Sea Science Center also has some trolley tours going on Thursday. So Thursdays nights apparently is the night to be downtown in Manchester. You can get more information on Jimmy LaHoo's concert and then the subsequent movie nights that'll be coming up in the next 2 weeks. You can get more information at that at intownmanchester.com. Also, this Sunday, Annie and the Orphans will perform a free concert at the Bandstand in Stark Park. That starts at 2 p.m. and that's completely free as well. And then next Sunday, the 26th, will be the Compact Big Band, which also will start at 2 p.m. at Stark Park. You can get more information about that and any other concerts coming up at starkpark.com. Also, this Sunday is the We Are One Festival in Veterans Park. If you've never been, this is the 6th annual event, and it features diverse food and entertainment. It's got a lot of culture in it. It's a great way to try a lot of great foods and enjoy just a festive event. The Manchester GOP had a tent there last year and will do so again this year. So if you're out and about and looking for something to do this Sunday, the 18th, go down to Veterans Park and go to the We Are One Festival. You can get more information at weareone.one. That's WEAREONE.ONE. And then next weekend, the 25th, 26th, will be the first Greek festival, and that one will be at Assumption Greek Orthodox Church over at 111 Island Pond Road. You don't want to miss that. There's a bunch of great food and music and Greek culture that you can enjoy there. I was reading, and I couldn't find the article. I don't know if I read it in the paper or in an email alert or on Facebook or whatever, but the city pools will be closing soon for the season. I know that seems hard to believe, but for some, this upcoming weekend will be the last one. You can go to the city website, manchesternh.gov, and click on city pools or on Parks and Rec and get more information. I know I did read that the DuPont Splash Pad will be open the weekend of the 26th, and then again Labor Day weekend, and then that's it for that. But that's all I have for this week. If you have any input on any of the things I was talking about, if you have any questions that I can try to answer for you, or if you have any ideas for shows in the future, I know I want to bring you some candidates on upcoming shows and try to feature some outdoor spaces, but the weather just has not been cooperating for me. But you can always reach out to me at ManchTalk@gmail.com. That's ManchTalk@gmail.com. I always look forward to getting emails from people that watch the show. Until then, make it a point to get outside while summer's still here. Take a walk on the bike path, take your dog down to the dog park, go up to Edgewater Kayak and Hooks It and rent a kayak and try kayaking on the Merrimack. Whatever you got to do, get outdoors and enjoy the great spaces in and around Manchester that I think, sometimes take for granted. That's all I have, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.